Welcome to EI Cafe with Azim, in which he reflects on key aspects of life and business through the lens of emotional intelligence. You will learn how emotional intelligence can be used for your success in both personal and professional lives. The podcasts cover topics on leadership, collaboration, culture, building a positive mindset, and even raising kids. You will hear key life lessons and tips from the most prominent personalities, business leaders, entrepreneurs, EI practitioners, and executive coaches from around the world. So sit back, relax with a cup of coffee as we get into today's show, EI Cafe with Azim.
In today's fast-paced business environment, team engagement is crucial for achieving high productivity and job satisfaction. However, many teams struggles with disengagement, resulting in poor performance and low morale. Team engagement is vital for an organization as it directly influences productivity, innovation, and employee satisfaction. Engaged teams are more committed to their work, leading to high quality outputs and better performance. Greetings to you from Colombo, Sri Lanka. This is EI Cafe with Azim, Season 11, and I'm your host, Azim Sahid, a human capital specialist, a Lego Serious Play facilitator, ICF certified PCC level coach, emotional intelligence and emotional culture practitioner. I'm one of the lead facilitators at Low Minute Learning Solutions. These weekly shows help you to explore the impact of emotional intelligence on our life. Through engaging conversation with industry leaders, innovators, executive coaches, and thought leaders, we aim to inspire and empower you. In today's conversation, we dwell down and explore the transformative journey from disengaged team to a dynamic, highly engaged one. We delve into effective strategies for enhancing team connections, fostering a collaborative culture, and maximizing productivity. So, join us to discover these practical tips inside and building better team relationship and unleashing team's full potential. To joining us today as an exceptional guest, of course, he is not new to EI Cafe. He was in one of my season 7. His name is Ishan Galapathy, a Six Sigma black belt, and is an operational excellence strategist, author, speaker, and mentor, renowned for a simple technique that deliver big change. And of course, we are going to talk about his very recent book. It's going to really unlock the potential. With more than 25 years experience across 7 countries, Ishan helps manufacturing business unlock their hidden capacity and true capability. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ishan Galapathy, excellent strategist, author, and speaker.
Azim, thank you so much. Wow, what a welcome, and Azim, thank you. And
welcome back to the cafe, Ishan.
We've been here before, and hey, thank you for pushing through. Obviously, you're not feeling the best, and love your commitment to the show and to the program. So very much love to explore this topic. It's something that's close to my heart. You won't be the first to know that I'm not an HR expert, so I don't come from the world of the people through that HR lens. But what I've realized as I was writing this book, or trying to conceptualize writing this book, Azim, is that the byproduct of the work that I do from a productivity improvement is actually improving employee engagement as well, as a byproduct, if I can highlight that. So that led me to write this book, and would love to double click and perhaps explore as we sip into a bit of a cup of warm tea with maybe lemon and honey for you to soothe your throat.
Absolutely. I'm getting under the weather now from since yesterday because we're having a very rainy weather in Sri Lanka today. So I'm getting hold of it. I hope this would be my ending my weekend with this podcast. Hopefully to get some rest into it. Before that, let's dive into this particular whole topic. So Ishan, as you mentioned, it should be a byproduct, but in an organizational perspective, I think this is the one of the major product we are going to talk about. We have seen organization these days talking a lot about engagement. Yes, Gallup puts out every year certain. I think you'll touch a little bit upon that. How many people are engaged, disengaged? It's quite important because how how to leverage their space. That's one of the challenges many organization comes with and leaders go through it. Now, my first question for you to start off, I would like to, give your insight and experience on it. How can organizations leverage team engagement strategies to boost productivity and innovation? Because innovation is a must. Otherwise, you're out of the business in today's competitive business environment. What would your thought? Let's start with that.
Yeah, geez, you dived straight into the deep end, right? I thought you were going to ease in, my friend. But all right, well, let's jump into the deep end. Hey, just to set a bit of context before I answer the question. So you mentioned Gallup, and yes, the whole book is based on the Gallup finding of employee engagement around the world, and they publish the data every year. So it makes it very easy for anyone to access and understand. So to paint the picture, over the last 15 years, when we look at engagement, this is what the world looks like. Now, Gallup engagement, there are three categories. So there are the engaged people. Now, these are the people we want the more of in our organization. Then there are the disgruntled and disenchanted people, right? These are the people that if you sit next to if you sit next to them in the canteen for 15 minutes, you feel like your whole life's being sucked out of you, right? The people who tell you that the world is wrong and the business is not right and the management is not talking to them. Basically, these are the people that, the world is out to get them. But what's important is there are also the fence sitters, the quiet quitters. Now, here's the picture. The latest 2024 data from Gallup tells us there's only 23% globally in the engaged category. There's close to about 18% that are disengaged, disgruntled. And if you do your maths, that's close to 60%, I'll round them up, that are fence sitters. So that's a lot. And here's the scary part. It's not the numbers. The scary part is this. When you look at the trend, and I can't not help look at trends because you mentioned all my qualifications and just, you don't need any of those Six Sigma statistical techniques to understand. You can just look at the graph that even Gallup provides on their website. So you don't even have to bother putting it into Excel. Now, the engagement scores is going up. So the engagement score is going up. You can see the trend. The disgruntled, disenchanted, unhappy people, that number is going down. You can see that clearly. So then you ask the question, so what's the problem? Isn't that what we're trying to achieve? Like, make more engaged people and then, get rid of the other ones. But here's the thing, that quietly quitting fence sitters, that 60% has not budged for a long time.
Right.
Ever. Not long time, ever. Right. There's a little bit of movement around 2013, but that's ignore that. It hasn't moved. So what it looks like is we, as leaders and as HR practitioners, we've been working damn hard trying to please these really difficult to deal with people. Well done. Well done, because we've absolutely worked really hard and we've just moved the needle a little bit. You know what? I reckon that we can unlock a lot more potential if we work on these fence sitters, because they're not fence sitters. They are not disengaged. And the new book that you mentioned, thank you, Azim, the subtitle is Engage the Seemingly Disengaged, where they're not engaged. They want to get involved, but we just don't talk to them. It's like the middle child that just gets ignored because we're just, dealing with the others. So the long-winded answer to your question, but I think this is helpful to your listeners and viewers, to paint that picture. Here's how we can improve productivity as leaders easily, and thereby improve engagement as well. Start with the few that are engaged. Nothing new there. These are the people that we include when we are starting a project or starting an initiative, do a change management activity. Yeah, sure. We need to leverage the engaged few. But here's the secret. Include and involve some of those fence sitters into those groups. And don't let them be idle. Allocate activities, tasks, and get them involved to do the doing part. And what that'll do is very easily, they would get excited because they're making a difference. And they would also become engaged over the long term through osmosis, because they see the impact of the difference they're making. And they get excited about the difference they're making in the workplace.
Brilliant. I think that's a good way to start. What I'm hearing from you, Ishan, is there are a set of people who are really engaged. There are a set of people who are not engaged at all. And there are a set of people whose most important set of people who's on the fence can be on the either side. And we are here to unlock that particular potential. As you mentioned the word unlock, I'm going to deeper dive, just asking you speak about the unlock framework in your new book, right? And that the framework consists of, building momentum, gain traction, and expand the followers. Now, I'm really curious to know what this framework is about. How can this framework really helps leaders and organizations to really touch those fence hitters? What's your thought?
Yeah, great. And a little bit more data. Sorry, I can't not help be the engineer. Gallup also tells us the cost of these fence sitters on the global economy is almost $9 trillion US, right? So now that might be a bit difficult to get our head around and think about what does that mean to us. But think about in your own organization, if 60% of your bandwidth is idle, just pull a number out. And I reckon whatever number you can pull out is a conservative estimate. If that number doesn't scare you, you probably haven't done the numbers right. But coming back to your question, yes, look, the framework is in those three parts. Build momentum and gain traction and expand your followers. I've looked at my own experience of working with my clients and also during my corporate days. And I've looked at case studies. And what I've done is in this book, use those case studies to illustrate that point. So it's not a technical manual, but it's a book that each chapter is filled with one of my personal stories. And I've also double-clicked on a global case study that I've researched. So explaining the theory through stories right throughout. So it's an easy read. And if anyone's interested, there's a free PDF to download from unlockbook.com.au. Coming back, so right at the beginning, that you've got very little bandwidth to get started if you're thinking about a transformation, if you're thinking of a major improvement journey. In my world, people talk about journey to excellence. That's a common phrase. But we always have that pivot point. And, if we go to, a classic Jim Collins, Good to Great, there is that pivot point. Enough is enough. We want to change. You are the good leader who see the world. But the hard part is always starting that next transformation, because as much as you, as the leader, you're inspired, as much as you see all the issues in the organization, as much as you're really dedicated to make a difference, guess what? People, the employees, have probably been there for a lot longer than you have, and they may have heard a version of the story that you're about to tell. As in, here I am standing on a podium, and here I am going to tell you how I'm dedicated to make your lives better and the company better, because people are cynical, people are tired, people are burnt out, people are getting dragged from pillar to post. So they would tell you, and I've seen this, and I've heard this, where people would tell you, saying like, I've been here 30 years. I'll see the likes of you come and go.
Yeah.
So I don't have to do anything, because all you're interested is you want to get your executive leadership bonus. So that starting point, Azim, is really difficult. And the odds are against you as a leader. This is why in that framework, I showcase and I tell, be careful how you start. Please do not start with a big bang town hall, grand opening session. That will not be in your favor. So you got to start small to build momentum and then
Ishan,
gain
just
traction.
I just want to pause you, right? You said that don't have big band stuff and start huge way. And going back in a couple of sentences, you were saying the employees always, okay, we have seen, I've been here for 30 years, etc., etc. And I'm really curious to know in the whole first concept, building momentum. In the chapter one,
Yeah,
you're talking about value your values. And here you say, demonstrates what you value and connect with your teams and employees at a human level. Show
right.
that you really care. Follow up with actions and engagement will shift. We learn how this concept was embraced with great success. Now, when a person comes and tell you, Ishan, look, Ishan, I'm here for 30 years. I've seen leaders coming and go. Don't come and show the all same stint here. Now, how can you handle with this particular whole piece of value your values? Because sometimes I, as employee, doesn't understand my value for the last
Right.
30 years. What's your
Right.
thought?
Yeah, absolutely. And my advice is don't get into a position of where the employees come and tell you that I've been here longer than you, because you've done something that you shouldn't have, i.e., you stood up on the podium and you told them that you're going to make it different. So if they're already telling you that, maybe you should have listened to this podcast earlier. But let's go on to that first chapter. There's a reason why it is the first chapter, and valuing your values. I'll share. Well, I'll give you an example later on, but here's the context of that chapter. When you're starting a transformation, and I'll continue to use that word transformation, although I think it's an overly used word and we hear it everywhere. But just bear with me. I'll use the word transformation. You're about to start. Most of the time, you know what? The board is after quick results. The shareholders want quick results, and you want to prove that you can turn around this quickly. So the chances are, when we go into these transformations, we look for low-hanging fruit. We look for big opportunities, and we tend to fast track those initiatives. That's going to show a difference either on your P&L or through other some means. What I would suggest is pause for a minute and also look at and listen to what's the noise that's coming from your employees in terms of their frustrations, in terms of their pain points, in terms of their passion, if I can call it that, because you only need to kind of walk the floor if it is in a manufacturing setting, or whatever that means in your business. If it is a service sector, walk the floor, whatever that means to you in your organization, and listen to where the noise is, because that means they're the things that people get frustrated with. As I say, these are the things that people go home and kick the cat, unfortunately, because they're frustrated. Find those points and do something about them first. And if it lines up with some low-hanging fruit, and if it shows up on your P&L as an improvement, then that's a double whammy. But find an area that connects with the people on the floor, because that's what they haven't seen. They've all seen the leaders who have come and made a difference, right? But they haven't seen leaders who have really gone and done something to ease the pain or reduce the frustration. So I'll share a couple of stories, and I won't go into the full details, but there's a story from Cadbury, the Cadbury chocolate. So, they started in the early 1800s, and as the business was growing, and it's interesting to learn how the business grew from the father to the two sons, and the two sons were really dedicated to grow the business, and they were struggling with the formula of getting the right chocolate. But one of their branding logos was absolutely pure, right? There was a absolutely pure and therefore the best, because the challenge at the time was getting rid of that bitter taste of cocoa. So they found a way. They traveled the world. They found a way. So the slogan, the company slogan, was absolutely pure, therefore the best. But what's happening in this Victorian era was London was getting developed, and it was getting crowded, and the city image was a little bit kind of dirty, I guess, as crowded cities tend to get. And it was contradicting to the image of absolutely pure, the message they were trying to get out. So George Cadbury, was one of the sons who was leading at the time with his brother, did something extraordinary. He went a bit further out in England, and he bought a number of acres, and he built a factory and relocated the factory in an area that's kind of fairly pristine. Nothing new there. Like, we still do that kind of stuff in this day and age. But here's the remarkable point. George realized it was only going to be a matter of time that the surrounding of that factory would also be similar to the one that they were leaving, right? Because it would get built up. So George personally, I think through one of his foundations, bought 140 acres surrounding that factory so that he can maintain a pleasant surrounding, and he built a lot of houses. So he pretty much built a whole city to a level that he found would be extraordinary, not crowded, not high density living, where people can breathe fresh air, people can still get sunlight, people can enjoy grass under their feet. And he gave them out, those houses, he gave them to the employees of Cadbury, I think almost for no interest. And he also provided extra rooms for, if you didn't have the money to buy a house, you could almost rent a room as well. Now, I can only imagine what that did for engagement, right? Because he is our boss, not only relocating the factory and building a brand new factory, but it comes with the whole kit and caboodle of, we get a like a village or the environment to live in, right? And as the old saying goes, happy wife, happy life, I guess. And back in the day, it's a very patriotic. Most of the operators were, I guess, male. But it's interesting, and it's interesting that he chose to name that town Bourneville after a river that was going close by in that area, and ville in French means village. So most of your listeners and viewers would be familiar with the brand name for Cadbury Bourneville for their hot chocolate. So now you know
now only exactly now only really getting to it. So thank you very much for sharing that. I think this, these are some of amazing examples. I think I believe, Ishan, there are some living examples also in similar in today's context. There are in Sri Lanka. We do have certain examples. So I think brilliant way to create that engagement per se. So on moving into the next, now building momentum, yes, it's important. How do you create that momentum? But then again, you talk about traction on your second part of it, your whole piece of framework, and you mentioned saying that it's important to how do you create that opportunity, right? And you say like traction is critical for success. Don't let it slip. Now, what are we going to really let it slip? What does it mean? And just take us through.
Yeah, sure. So this is where, if you've got to a good start, then do whatever you can to fast track progress, because progress because progress is infectious. So you want to give that people of, yeah, we are making progress. And this is where, if you have, if you have resourced your teams correctly, to include some of those fence sitters, that it'll come in really, really handy. Now, this is where you're doing everything to, to help them to deliver better results. I'll give you a classic. I'll give you an example. Recently I was working with one of my clients, and we have it's a manufacturing setting, and we've basically got started. We didn't do the big bang, so I do practice what I preach. And in this team, we included one of the forklift drivers, right? Julian is his name, and this forklift driver has been with the company for 15 years, right? And he was one of those fence sitters, and we made good progress as we went through, structured problem solving. There are so many methods in there. So there are so many methods out in the world, and within 3 or 4 weeks, the teams were, they had shifted their productivity by nearly 30%. And it was only later on, afterwards, over a cup of coffee, I was talking to Julian. And I was asking him, saying like, "Hey, Julian, what are you seeing now? What are you feeling? What's different now what's different now versus 2 months ago?" And it's what he said that was so profound that I realized, oh my goodness, there's gold here. What he said was this: "Ishan, before, we never got involved in improving the factory or improving anything. I was just loading and unloading trucks, rain, hail, or shine. And if there's anything to be improved, they did that. By they, he meant the people in the office, the engineers, the team leaders and the managers, they did all the improvement work. And for 15 years, he said, I come here with my full-time work, and I don't have to think. So that's why I love coming to work, because I don't have to think. Ishan, but what you have told me and what you have shown us is that we can do so much more with what's already under our noses and under our feet." And said, "Ishan, I feel valued, and I feel like I'm adding value now." Like those words, like when someone an employee tells you that I feel valued and I feel like I'm adding value, you know that you've touched, something in that person's mind in the right way. And all we did, Azim, was allow people to explore ideas, get them to go and talk to the operators, work with them on what's getting in the way. And as leaders, we help them to, with a little bit of overtime, to come and fix some of those areas. Give them some sundry expenses to buy a few things. So these are not big ticket items, but all we are doing is allowing, and that's the big thing. We are allowing people to work with each other and helping them to get over those challenges. But the end result is people feel engaged and people feel like they're building momentum. So, and if you do more and more of that, then you're helping to deliver results. Very quickly, so I have this theory and method of 10-week projects. I say 10 weeks because I keep 2 weeks up my sleeve, 12 weeks. Because 12 weeks fits into a 13-week business quarter. So everything I do, I get teams and I get businesses to say, "Come on, you got to have a 10-week mindset," because you can count them in your hands, and it's a little bit more than something that you can do in a week. So it's not just a task that you would write on a whiteboard and put someone's name against it and say like, "Hey, Azim, can you just go and get this expedited?" It's not one of those. And it's not like implementing SAP. It's not like a 2-year project. giving them 10 weeks is good, to get them to work as a team and unlock whatever the constraint you're trying to improve. So that mindset of creating 10-week projects, get the fence sitters involved, help them to overcome hurdles, are probably 3 things that you can do to fast track results.
So, Ishan, I'm curious to know that when you had that chat with that gentleman, Julian, and I'm really curious to really connect the conversation piece. How important that piece in that particular segment of, creating that traction?
Yeah, that conversation. I talk to people, at every opportunity, and I ask, I ask those dumb questions, and I ask the most obvious questions, and that's the curiosity in me, and that's because I want to learn from people's behaviors. I want to learn from people's mindsets, and that's the me, and I guess.
And sorry, just interrupt you. When you say dumb, I see in your chapter 6 you say smart factories and dumb operators, right? I'm just is there a connection with those things?
There is, in fact, and we can. That's probably a good segue. So chapter 6 is titled "Smart Operators," and yeah, it's a good segue because chapter 6 is titled "Smart Factories and Dumb Operators." Smart factories because we are living in the so-called Industry 4.0 era, where everything that can be connected with thinking and wanting to connect, I guess. So let me just finish that conversation. So when I was talking to Julian, so I get to understand what's going on at a psychological level. And, when we know that when people say that they're being valued, that something's connected. We've touched on that already. So yeah, that's a great segue to now move towards the chapter 6, as you mentioned, smart factories and dumb operators. Look, I talk about smart factories because we are living in the Industry 4.0 era, right? Where the notion is that we're going to be connecting anything and everything that can be connected. So if anything's got an IP address, we are interested in connecting. And we believe that this is going to drive productivity up and costs down. I'm not going to get into the whole Industry 4. And if you're wondering what were the other 3, well, have a look. It's been in the last 200 years. But all you need to know is Industry 4 is about trying to connect everything around the world, and through that, how can we drive productivity and influence costs? But here's the thing. When I walk into businesses, right, and when I see what's going on, and I see flashy digital screens, with worm graphs, showing their productivity, and I go from departments to departments, and we look at, the information that's being transferred from one to the other. And I'd ask people to download the data, for problem solving. And they struggle to either download the data that's in a useful manner, or if they do, they really don't know how to look at the data, or how to manipulate the data, or how to draw insights from the data. Or they will complain about the accuracy of the data. So as much as we are trying to fast track this technology, and as much as we are trying to help our people, we are actually not leveraging the people factor. We are not actually working with the people to work those 2 factors together, right? Think about whether it is in the service sector, how disconnected we are, from one department to another. The amount of data that's getting collected from us as consumers. You walk in, and these businesses can't find us or use that information in a useful manner. I'll give you a classic example. Just last week, I was traveling interstate, so I booked a flight, traveling to Melbourne. and I had an issue with the flight, so I had to call and make some changes. So as soon as I dial the airline, the first thing they ask is punch in your frequent flyer number so we know exactly who you are. And then they say, punch in your reference number for the booking. So I'll punch in as well. My expectation, and I'm sure yours would be too, is that as soon as the person answers at the other end, that they will be having that information come up on their screen so they know exactly who you are and they know exactly what my booking is. So let's start the conversation from that point. But that's not where the conversation starts. It's just like, who are you? It's like, well, this is my name. All right. Well, they ask a few questions to validate security. I appreciate that. That's okay. And then they ask, so what is this about? And I'm like, oh, it's about my flight. They're like, oh, where to? What's the booking? And I'm like, I just entered it onto the phone. Do you not see that? Go like, well, not really. And I'm like, what's the point? Right. So why ask? Why do you ask? So we are still back in not even industry 3.0 of we are trying to leverage the technology, but there's something so wrong and so disconnected at the other end.
Yeah.
All right, let me just calm down, right? Because this thing really bugs me. And I see it amplified. I mean, that's just a teeny weeny small thing. And we are getting into QR codes now for scan this, scan that, and put your information here, but it's not giving the result that we think it is. But coming back to my factory setting of dumb operators, so it's this whole notion of we as leaders that think we can implement technology, we can put in equipment to replace humans. And I think we don't probably call it out that, but that's our thinking, right? That we can do better, we've got more reliability and we've got better quality, and that's the thinking. But the thinking behind that is we can do better than humans. So in that, I feel, and the story of Julian is a classic one of, no, there is so much latent potential that we haven't leveraged, and that's the problem. It's the fact that we haven't leveraged the potential is the issue. It's not that the technology is better. So my dumb operators is not in a demeaning manner. I call dumb operators because I think these really smart people like Julian, so dumb is an acronym as well. I think they are constantly devalued, underestimated, misunderstood, and belittled. And sadly, these employees are waiting to be developed, utilized, motivated, and believed in. So that's my dumb acronym.
Absolutely. Ishan, it's again, when the whole factor, especially when you start talking about the technology and the conversation with the airline, right? Now, I'm just trying to refer your chapter number 7, right? We always, we know Simon Sinek. He always starts with why and talk about the golden circle, right? Now, if the technology is there, yes, starting with why is okay. But when I hear your story, I believe your chapters number 7 says start with who. I think if the organization really understand that fence eaters, who are these fence eaters? When we start with who, like the Juliet, what you just had, I think we can really put those people into unlock their potential. Is it? Am I in line with what you're trying to say?
Absolutely. Love how you connect dots, Azim. Absolutely. That is the thing. So I'm not saying Simon Sinek is wrong. I'm just saying there's another step before the starting with why, and that is to start with who, and that is exactly Azim, starting with those individuals. Because imagine, you can go with the three golden circles of Simon Sinek's of, the why and how and then the what. But imagine you've done that work. You're doing that from an executive leadership position. You're doing that with your senior leadership team. Trying to figure out, where does the purpose of the organization and all of it, and deployed correctly, that should flow down to every level of the organization where people can connect to that purpose and the mission, right? So that's the whole thinking behind starting with why, and there's absolutely a place for it, but there's also a timing for it. Now, if you do that at the beginning, and hence the reason it's chapter 7 and not chapter 1, If you do that at the beginning, you're deploying a concept of connecting to an organization that's not connected. You've done all the work of trying to explain this is why, and this is, why we exist, to a world that's not, to an organization that's not willing to listen. But if you pause that part first, you do some work activities, and we explored of how not to start, not from a podium. So you start under the radar. That's my method. Start under the radar. Do some of this work where people don't have to go home and kick the cat. And do some of this work where the progress becomes infectious and people want to do more. And slowly people will start talking differently. And if you listen to the conversations in the tea room or in the canteen, you will see that it's different. And that's when the Titanic is turning. And that's the point you go like, okay, so you've actually worked with the who. So whether it is the right stakeholders and whatever word you want to put in. So you've tapped on these individuals who are fence sitters. You started to convert them. Now the iron is hot for you to strike. Now would be the time to go back to Simon Sinek and then start talking about, guys, this is why we exist. This is our purpose. Now you have more of an audience that will connect with that. Now you can continue on that cycle of now continue to build more momentum, right? That's what you got to do. So hence the chapter 7, and that's the concept.
Brilliant, brilliant. I think as we come for latter part of a conversation, yes, it's a bit of a different concept, sort of a storytelling conversation me and Ishan are having today, right? I love the fact it's supported by the whole fact, and your book is so brilliant. I just want to touch before we end the last part of the book, which is say about expanding the followers. I think it's a quiet notion that we talked about build momentum, yes, and we talked about gain traction, and we talked about smart practice and the dumb operators at the same time. Start with the who factor. Now, I'm curious to know, as a leader, if you have sort of an ego to touch this particular whole, middle fence hitters, how this particular unlocking going to happen? Because I've just read through your chapter 11. You said leverage their ego. Now, I understand their ego, but then again, let's look at leadership per se, how that ego also comes into place. What's your thought?
Yeah, great way. And again, look, when the leaders have an ego, gee, Azim, I mean that might be a whole new podcast episode on its own, right? Look, but people like yourself and Luminary, and I think they do great work. I see all the postings on LinkedIn. So I know you're doing great work to work with leaders, and I know the type of people that's founded this your organization and doing that. So got a lot of appreciation and value the work you're doing. Now, the concept of leveraging their ego is also something that I came across, because at this point in your framework, so we are trying to expand the followers, right? And it came about through one of the other fence sitters, and again came about from another coffee chat that I was having. And let's call this person Kevin. I mean, I was talking to Kevin. What he said was, and this is towards the end of having delivered a project, one of those 10-week projects. And I said, "Hey, Kevin, what do you think? What's happened and what's about this?" I said, "Ishan, it's amazing. This is amazing because I understand this whole process." And what he said was, "What?" And he said, so what he said was, before we started doing this, Ishan, I used to go on barbecues and social, parties and all of it. And a lot of my friends and colleagues are working for big companies, the Amazons and, whatever those big companies. And they always talk about the projects that they're working on and what they're delivering and the savings. And Kevin was telling me, I did not understand that language. I did not know what they were talking about. And I was simply making things up on the fly because I wanted to keep up with the conversation. Because I did not want to be seen amongst my peers that I was less than they are. So I was making things up to keep up. I said, Ishan, I don't have to do that anymore. In the conversations now, I simply talk about the projects. I know what a project is, and I know, the framework of delivering projects. And in that moment, it took me a while to understand what does he actually mean. And then it clicked, the Maslow's hierarchy. Because when I look at that person, and here in Australia, we have a lot of migrants, and a lot of these people, don't speak good English, and it's their second language, right? Um, as it is mine. So there's a language barrier. And because of the language barrier, sometimes they don't want to put their hand up to be in a leading role. But you know what? They are more than capable of some of these leaders who talk the talk but just don't walk the walk. So what it realized to me was, as thinking back and asking more of Kevin's backstory, geez, as soon as he's migrated to Australia, like those like the first level, the second level, and then the third levels of Maslow's needs of hierarchy, or the hierarchy of needs, he was able to achieve those very quickly, and soon becomes that recognition among peers. I think we're about the fourth level, and it becomes damn hard to tick that because we compare, right? And it's so hard in this world that we live in today that it's such a social media pretend society we live in, of all the happy photos and all the glamorous photos, and we compare that, and that's not the true picture. So what's happened in Kevin's case is that we were able to give something to him that he found it to be so valuable that he's able to tick off that fourth level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. He doesn't know that, but that's what's happening inside his head. So what that does is, all of a sudden, now he's feeling 6 feet tall. Now he's walking around with his chest puffed up. Now he's talking, although his English is not perfect, you can pick up on the energy of the conversation. And these are the people now you tap into to lead your next initiative. Because these are the people who are able to connect with the next lot of fence sitters. Because these are the people that their people saw as just a mediocre player. And they're going, what happened to you? I want to have a little bit of what you're having, right? And it becomes infectious. So you then leverage that. So I mean leverage the ego in a good perspective, not in a bad manipulative way. But this is where, you know what? And at this stage, all you're doing is just amplifying the number of people. You're multiplying the number of leaders you've got to drive change. And when you do that, and when you share their success stories and you get them to share it, what happens is you're creating this culture of positivity. You're creating a culture where people want to succeed. You're creating a culture where people are putting their hand up to be leaders of driving change. And you're creating a culture that is so positive and welcoming. And at that point, those disgruntled, unhappy, they will either move out, or they will either just be quiet.
Absolutely.
Right? So
I think I can, it's when you say ego, as you said, people had a bit of a different label context. So at one of my podcast episodes, I was having a chat with a coach, Janet Harvey. I said, doesn't ego is a problem? I said, Azim, she said, Azim, we need to have ego, because the moment the way we have ego, the energy we transfer into us, our own growth. I think your story truly resonates that particular statement which Janet made, because everybody has ego. Doesn't mean that, but it should be for our own growth. I think that's wonderfully connected. So Ishan, so we're coming to the end, but in the chapter 12, your first element start with playfulness, which is my part of the area also. We can really quickly touch that playfulness part. What this playfulness you're trying to say in rising the tide to lift the boat, all the boats. What does the playfulness means?
Yeah, and it's very much about yeah, if you've done it correctly and if you're at this point, then it's about sharing success. It's about creating that culture, and it's about allowing the people who've delivered the results to be on the podium. And I think one of the easiest things of multiplying those fence sitters to be in the to fall into the right camp is to, as soon as a project is completed, get the project team to come and share that news in a town hall setting or a either through your intranet or whatever medium you have, and yeah, all of them use all of them to share their story through their words, because employees are willing to listen to their own, as opposed to coming from a leader behind a lectern with a flashy PowerPoint screen, right? So that's also a way of leveraging. And if you can celebrate success, so find any reason to celebrate, right? Whether it is the halfway point of getting results, or whether it is these individuals, whatever celebration and whatever connects to your workplace and to your employees, and food, I think, is a universal thing that connects people, right? Here in Australia, where it's a multicultural country, we bring different types of foods, and it's like a mega global party. But you know what, even in Sri Lanka, right? Or in any other country for that matter, what's the part? So find a reason to celebrate success, find the way of bottling that feeling of success, and keep that, put posters in the canteen, with captions from these people of, I believe in this, those kind of things, because what that does is creating that positive culture. And the metaphor of a rising tide lifts all boats is what you're trying to create, because that's the point of when those fence sitters also can't not help but get automatically engaged.
Brilliant way to end our conversation. So Ishan, before we wrap up, I just want to ask from you, what would be one key takeaway you want to share with us, or a message you want to share with our viewers and audience? What would be one thing you want to share?
Yeah, as leaders, don't work too hard to please those disgruntled, disenchanted employees. You'll get better results by working with those few engaged people, and include and involve those fence sitters. You can't go wrong. And if you want to read more, unlockbook.com.au.
Brilliant. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap for today of our discussion on unlocking team engagement. A big thank you to our guest, Ishan Galapathy, excellent strategist, author, speaker, for sharing his such valuable insight, experience, of course. Not forget the stories. Brilliant way to bring the context in. It's clear, enhancing team engagement, organizations can create a thriving work environment that supports both individual and collective growth as a team. If you'd like to get connected with Ishan, please log on to his LinkedIn profile. Of course, you can explore his work on www.ishangalapathy.com. Of course, all the links will be available on the podcast note for your reference, and you can get hold of his book as well. On that note, Ishan, thank you very much for being in the cafe once again, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Azim. I hope you will get well. And by the way, if lemon honey tea doesn't work, rum and honey also works.
Okay, honey will work, but not rum with me.
Of course, my apologies. Sorry, that was a bad joke. Very
That's
bad.
okay.
But of course,
Okay.
yes, just stick to honey.
Thank you, Ishan.
Thank you for joining yet another successful episode of EI Cafe with Azim. We appreciate your time and invite you to subscribe to the show so that you don't miss out on the next episode. Write a review and even rate it if you please. You can also follow Azim Sahir on social media. We would also love to hear from you on what topics you'd like us to cover and even who you'd like us to invite to the show. We wish you well until we meet again on another episode of EI Cafe with Azim.